Good morning and welcome. My name is Ioannis Armakolas. I'm a senior research fellow and at the Hellenic Foundation for European Foreign Policy, called ELIAMEP in Athens, and also director of the Think NIA initiative. Today we are focusing on enlargement, something that has been in the agenda, on the agenda of both Greek foreign policy and EU foreign policy for decades, and of course, when it comes to the Western Balkans, for 2 decades at least. But very often we think that things have not progressed as much as they should or as much as they could. We have an excellent panel today that will discuss this issue, I think with lots of experience and plenty of ideas, including new ideas about how to move the process forward. We have with us Ambassador Papadopoulou, a very experienced and prominent diplomat of Greece, but also today Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for coming, Ms. Papadopoulou. Next to her, we have, Mr. Endrit Yzeiraj, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Deputy Minister of Europe of Albania, and Mr. Damjan Jović, State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Serbia. And I will start directly with Ms. Papadopoulou, Ambassador Papadopoulou. There is these days the famous new momentum in enlargement policy. Greece has always been a pro-enlargement country, even in difficult times, even at times when many of the 27, 28 member states were not in favor of enlargement, or they were very reluctant. So we were on the right side of history, let's put it this way, always. However, it's not a straightforward endeavor. It's not going to be easy, let's put it this way. So what is it that we should do as the EU to make the most from this new momentum so that we don't miss this opportunity this time?
Thank you. Although enlargement is one policy, it has to be seen tailored according to the needs of each individual country, and also according to the needs of each region. The Western Balkans were the first bunch of countries waiting at the door of the European Union since 2003. Of course, at that time it was Balkans. Some countries moved on, but the Western Balkans are still waiting. We could spend hours and hours discussing why this happened. We have to admit that the candidate countries have their own fair share of blame. But anyway, this is what it is. And we have reached a point in the Western Balkans, and that was the case before the invasion of Russia to Ukraine occurred, that there was enlargement fatigue, both in the Western Balkan countries and in the member states. The war in Ukraine changed it all, and it brought back to the surface the importance of enlargement. The European Union was a little taken aback by the events in Ukraine, and enlargement, which was to a grand extent at the back of our minds, came back to the front, and we realized that enlargement is not a technical issue, it's a geopolitical issue involving the security of the entire continent. With this new momentum, the Western Balkans came back to the forefront, and there were a number of countries, and Greece was the first among these countries, who said that, yes, we understand that Ukraine, Moldova, and eventually Georgia have to be members of the European Union. They're more than welcome to become members of the European Union, yes, to enlargement to the east, but in no way at the expense of the Western Balkans, because geopolitical reasons apply to both regions. They might have different elements, but they're the same kind of reasons. And if we want to have a stable and prosperous and secure continent, that has to include the center and the east. So here we are again with this new momentum, but having said that, we have to make sure that we give them the instruments, but they also respond to the challenge. Enlargement is judged on its own merits, every country on its own merits. It's not a package deal. So every country has to do its homework and accept what are the terms and the conditions and move forward. And they should take advantage of this period in time because openings do not happen every day.
Let me insist a bit, Ambassador Papadopoulou, still on the question of the momentum. You mentioned yourself that the war in Ukraine has made us realize that this enlargement policy is a geopolitical policy. First and foremost, it's not about the technical criteria. They're important, but first and foremost is a political decision about which is geopolitical. And the question is a scenario whereby we may have, let's say, in a few months, next year, who knows, a ceasefire or a peace in Ukraine. Do you think that would reduce the appetite for enlargement that we see today? Do you think that it will, our new momentum will fizzle out as war in Ukraine ends, or we have really learned our lesson and we are ready to continue with this process?
No, it will not decrease. I think, on the contrary, it will increase the momentum. Because, okay, we have a ceasefire, but then we have to work for the day after. And the way the day after for Ukraine includes eventual accession to the European Union, the same goes for the Western Balkans, where the challenges are real and present. But enlargement is geopolitical, but with technical characteristics, especially because when Greece joined the at that time, European communities, the degree of integration was much, much less in the European Union. Today, the degree of integration is huge. So the enlargement countries have to adapt to stricter rules. They have to have done a lot of more preparations, because you can imagine, if you have a loose scheme of cooperation, is one thing to take somebody who might not be up to the standards. But when you have the degree of integration, and as we move forward with defense and everything, this integration becomes we're really interconnected. Just to give you an idea, the Greek Foreign Ministry, European affairs now, it's all over, because you cannot have a policy without a European dimension. So it means that the enlargement countries have to make more efforts, because they cannot be accepted without being thoroughly prepared. So it's geopolitical, yes, but highly technical as well.
More efforts.
A lot more.
More efforts. So, Mr. Yzeiraj, there is an ambitious goal, I think, these days in Tirana, that maybe Albania will be ready, if they do their best, to join the EU by the end of the decade, together with Montenegro. I mean, everybody assumes that if things go well, Montenegro will join until the end of the decade. Is this a realistic goal for Albania? I mean, what are the challenges, and what is Albania doing in that direction?
Well, let me actually just give you a very brief overview of what's happening right now. We have elections coming up in about a month. The opposition opened their campaign yesterday. The government will open it today. And the main argument that we are having in the election is that the government is promising EU entry, or at least a country that is right on the brink, by the end of the mandate, so 2029. And the opposition is saying, you cannot do it, but we can. So there is no disagreement on the path of the country. Every political party, every political factor on the country has one goal, and they understand what the ambition of the population is, and that is EU entry, joining the EU. So on the political side, I think everyone agrees that that is the direction of the country, and therefore it shows the direction that the population wants to take. Now the technical side, and I've had the tough luck, I would say, of having to work on a lot of the chapters before at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also in my previous position as Deputy Minister of Economy. And it is a substantial amount of work. We've done some calculation that it is going to take us about 120,000 pages of legal alignments to fulfill all the various criteria and standards, because as the Deputy Minister was saying before me, joining the EU in 1980 was much easier. Joining now means you have to align and you have to incorporate a substantial amount of EU acquis that covers essentially every chapter of human life and human activity. All of our public administration right now is essentially working on this issue. So if you are a public administration official in Albania and you log into your laptop, into whichever office you work, public, local, state level, if you work at some agency, you will immediately receive some kind of update. EU Chapter 7 alignment process update, where are we? Every day, every Albanian official is working on this path. But, as you said, this is also a political process. There are issues within the EU aligning process that require substantial political decision-making. So public officials will be able to, I think, and I suppose that they will be able to have all the technical work done. At some point, some key political decisions will need to be made. I think right now, there is a clear ambition, at least from the government side, that when it comes to EU alignment and EU integration process, there will be no delays. So the government will always agree on aligning whatever legal process and legal procedures we have with the EU standards. It isn't a very ambitious standard. Our ambition is to have all the technical work done by 2027, so December 31st. Obviously, with 120,000 pages, we might need to have some kind of other issue maybe by the first half of 2028. But the hope is that we will be able to do this mostly by 2027. We have already outlined all the key processes and the key procedures that we have to align with EU standards, and then it becomes a political decision, right? Once you complete all the technical work, then you have to go and ask officially to join the EU, and then I hope that the goodwill that the ambassador and deputy minister was talking about that the EU has right now, that this positive momentum, I hope it will still be there. I think there has been an agreement on all sides that it is impossible to have a black hole right in the middle of the continent. And I hope that this idea, this knowledge that we obtained during these years will not fizzle out, and I do not see any reason why it should in the upcoming years.
Thank you. Mr. Jović, Deputy Minister of Albania, presents an optimistic picture, but Albania only recently started accession negotiations, and Serbia has been negotiating with the EU for accession for more than a decade. So maybe lessons learned from Serbia are important for the region. What's your feeling? Do you feel, given also that there is talk about Montenegro joining in the next couple of years the European Union, is Serbia feeling that it's a bit left behind in this process? Are you still in position to catch up and maybe join together with Montenegro? What are the main challenges and what is the ambition and optimism, if there is optimism in your government?
First of all, big thanks to you and the organizers of this important event for the opportunity to talk about this very important topic today here. And also, I wanted to congratulate you on the 10th anniversary of Delphi Economic Forum. Speaking about the accession process of Serbia, I must say I was personally involved in this as a member of the national negotiating accession team of Serbia for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And I must say there is a lot of responsibilities on the side of candidate states, but sometimes unfortunately, also political conditioning prevail over, technical or merit-based criteria. And of course, there is fatigue, with this long accession process of Serbia to the EU among the general population. And this is, of course, influencing dynamics of the process. However, we are still optimists that in 2 years we will be ready or prepared in institutional terms, legal terms, to be ready to join. It's an ambitious goal, and then it will depend more on the EU if on when it will be ready to accept new members. My dear colleague, Ambassador Papadopoulou, mentioned that it is a good moment now politically for enlargement with the war situation in Ukraine and everything else. However, there will be also economic momentum, you know, that is influencing this process. And from what we see, the economic performance of major EU countries is not good at the moment, and that's something that we should also see as important thing to influence dynamics of our accession process. So we are optimists on our side that we will do our part of the job, but it's very difficult now to predict when the EU will be actually ready to accept new members. Sometimes it's also difficult to understand that it's easier to accept, let's say, millions of illegal migrants to the EU than the candidate countries and people that live in Europe for centuries, actually, and that are putting much more efforts to join the club. Our strategic goal is to join. We will try to do our best. We will have the new government in place next week, and the main priority of that government will be to do our part of reforms that are necessary to join.
Ambassador Papadopoulou, Mr. Jović mentioned the EU to be ready to accept new members. And there is a big debate, as you know, of course, very well, about what kind of institutional changes need to be introduced, whether we need to change the decision-making process, what are those reforms that the EU should do in order to accept the reformed countries in the European family. From the perspective of medium-sized countries like Greece, what do we need? Do we need extensive reforms, limited reforms? What is acceptable and what is not acceptable? And how fast?
You know, we have to make a distinction between enlargement fatigue and changes within the European Union, especially when it comes to decision-making process. Enlargement fatigue was real before the Ukraine war. Now, yes, everybody understands it's going to be a big change, especially a number of countries enter around the same time. Maybe not simultaneously, but there is not enlargement fatigue. Everybody understands this is necessary, this is vital for the European Union. Reforms have to be made in the European Union regardless of enlargement. Even in today's form, the European Union needs to be reformed. After all, we have to remember that the European Union is a work in progress. It's a work that evolved gradually since its inception to what it is today. And every time it evolves according to the circumstances. And although decision-making is a slow process, it's naturally a slow process, the European Union has proven time and over that when the need arises, we manage to find ways to adapt and reform. For us to connect the two processes together means that both are going to be delayed. The reform process will take a lot of time and will affect a lot of areas, not necessarily connected with enlargement. Definitely they need a consensus. So if you wait for consensus to every reform initiative in the European Union, enlargement might take a long, long time. So we don't think that we should make the one prerequisite for the other. Reforms will come either way. If we manage to do them before, that will be even better. But we don't do them for the enlargement countries. We do it for us. And it's very unfair to the enlargement countries to have them waiting at the door until we reform, and then we might even lose the momentum. So there are two processes, very much needed, both of them, but not connected separately, connected in this way. although we all understand that the more members are in the Union, the more reforms we need in order to have a faster decision-making process.
Thank you. Mr. Yzeiraj, a bit difficult, sensitive question I will ask. Very often, I find when I speak to officials in Western Europe, maybe not publicly, but definitely behind closed doors, that for Albania, which they recognize has done serious progress and they're working hard for acceding to the European Union, the image of the country, or whatever stereotypes there are in Western Europe, in societies or the political elites, the image of the country will be, whether stereotypical or not, a major obstacle. Do you think this is a real threat to the accession process of Albania? And if yes, what do you do about it?
Well, I'll actually, again, I'll take one step back and share with you a small meeting I had about 2 months ago with a couple of ambassadors from 2 countries that have historically been quite critical of the country and have always either voted or to a certain extent refused to accept the country's progress in the past. And they said one of the best things that happened to Albania in recent years was this touristic boom that you've had since 2020 to 2021. Because a lot of people had various stereotypes about the country in Western Europe. One of the stereotypes that I was quite surprised actually to hear about was that this is maybe a nest of Islamic terrorism. Because the association was that since there is a Muslim population in Albania, it has to be also associated with terrorism. And no matter how many times public officials would say that this wasn't the case, the population would always believe this. So after Albania became a quite popular touristic destination, a lot of people had the chance to come, to visit, to see, and they had this opportunity to experience a country that in many ways is quite normal. It has, of course, its issues, but it doesn't have any of the problems that a lot of the populations were concerned about. So this goes to show that sometimes myths and ideas can outlive their usefulness even a long time after they have not been true in real life. But yes, we acknowledge that we've had problems, and we acknowledge that we are trying to take steps to solve them. One of the most critical reforms that we have taken in recent years, which is still very much part of the political debate in the country, is the justice reform that had absolute, complete voting by all parties in the parliament in 2016. 100% of the votes were in favor of it. There have been a lot of public officials who have now been accused due to the justice reform, or who are being prosecuted, who have cases in waiting because of the justice reform. And though at times, various people within the political system might have felt threatened by it, the public support for the justice reform continues to be extremely high. So no one dares challenge it. No one dares say anything that will go against the spirit and the ideas of the justice reform. So that is one very key and very strong example of how the country is actually taking some very decisive steps that might have not been taken unless this EU pressure was there. And this is, of course, only one of the very big examples, because this is quite visible. There are a lot of other areas that I know there is a lot of progress being made due to the pressure, positive pressure that the EU is putting on us. We've had for a long time, and the EU knows this quite well, we've had a huge issue with land property rights because of the communist system, which nationalized the entire territory rights in the country. After the 1990s, there have been continuous disputes for property rights in Albania. Most of them go to courts, and we have a hard time acquiring investments because people do not know where they can open a factory and so on. Right now, there is a very large process to completely digitize all of the property rights in the country, have a online digital cadastre which should be operational by 2027, 2028. And this is a massive undertaking that probably would have not been the case if the EU and the pressure wasn't there. So these are only two examples of how we know for certain that we are undertaking some reforms that are extremely painful, extremely difficult, extremely time-consuming, but they're happening because of the EU, and I hope they will be able to, quite soon also change whatever negative perceptions the countries still have, though, as you said, a lot of these negative perceptions are already dissipating.
Mr. Jović, on another sensitive question. There is turmoil, political turmoil in Serbia for several months. Is that a problem for the accession process? I mean, one of the core, it's not even a conditionality, it goes without saying. To join the EU, you need a stable democratic country, right? At the moment, we see huge polarization in Serbia. Granted, I have to admit there is polarization in all societies these days, including all the EU member states, or most of the EU member states. But in Serbia, it's a candidate country, and we see some extreme levels of polarization. Is that a serious concern for the accession process itself this time?
Look, usually I do not comment on internal political affairs when I'm abroad because I consider it not to be a good diplomatic manner. However, yes, we had a challenging political situation in Serbia for almost 5 months now, but as we see it is calming down at the moment. As I mentioned before, we will have the new government in place next week, formed by the same majority in the parliament, and we will see how it will work. We hope to continue actually the economic growth that was the second fastest in Europe last year, and we hope to have the same result this year. This is what we are focused on at the moment. As you said, there is a polarization in many countries all around the world, and especially in Europe. Also, we see the same in the US at the moment, but that's democracy, and what we are happy to see is that there was no major accidents for 5 months of big protests in Serbia. Some of the requests are legitimate, and we hope to see better version of ourselves in the next couple of months and in forthcoming years. So, but I don't think it is affecting actually the speed of our accession process to the EU, because for already 3 years, in accordance with the technical merit-based criteria, we have cluster 3 prepared for opening, but still there was no decision from European institutions to open this cluster 3. So it is not contributing the accession process in terms of dynamics, but I don't see that it will influence it in a way that will change something crucially, because we've been stuck in this accession process for already 3 years for political reasons. Because, when there is a difficult international environment in many, and especially difficult economic situation around Europe, then the enlargement is not the most popular topic internally in some major European countries, and that's something that we cannot influence.
Thank you. I think we can open the floor now for a couple of questions from the audience. Any disagreement?
I think even the audience at times gets
Everybody
tired
agrees.
With the integration process.
I have more questions if there's nothing from the audience. Okay. I will go back to Ambassador Papadopoulou. Greece is in a group of countries in the EU that is coordinating, let's put it this way, or exchanging views and ideas on how to accelerate the process. Not by, of course, not paying attention and monitoring the criteria and everything, but at least showing to the members, to the candidates, that we are serious about the process. Is there anything more that we can do within the group of countries that support enlargement, especially the countries that support Western Balkan accessions?
We do already a lot, but we have to say how we do it. We do it in two directions. One direction is to help the countries themselves. We have excellent cooperation with Albania in this regard. We have a cooperation with Serbia, very good, excellent cooperation, and with all the other countries, candidate countries, giving them technical assistance, because we recognize that this is quite an endeavor they're embarking on. It's not so easy. So we try to lend our experience and our knowledge to these countries so the process can expedite. On the other hand, we try with our partners in the EU to tell them that, yes, it's a technical process. The geopolitical risks now are everybody accepts them, so there's nothing to say there. It's a technical process. It has political elements like democracy, rule of law, human rights. We have one candidate country whose enlargement process is put on hold, Georgia, for obvious political reasons. But even with Georgia, our point is not to stop it. Put it on hold and give the people the time and the space to adapt themselves, to change, to create the political conditions that will allow this process to move on. We understand that each country has its own challenges. Not everything is the same. And that although the criteria are the same, their implementations have to be tailored to face the needs of each individual country. And this is another area that we work very closely with the Commission to help them understand the realities of each country, especially the countries we know most. And I think other partners do it for other countries, so that this process goes forward as fast as possible. It is very important for Greece that this window of opportunity is not going to get lost, because we don't know when we are going to have such an opening. And we will do and we're doing and we will do everything possible in order to push forward, even on a political level. And I want to remind the recent letter of the Greek Prime Minister to all his the leaders of all the countries about Serbia and about pushing forward the accession process for Serbia. So we do also political interventions in order to help countries as we see the need. So it's a multifaceted effort which is going to continue, even intensify, because as I said before, and I want to underline that, we have to take advantage of this window of opportunity.
It's important not to lose this. Yeah. Deputy Minister, economic situation in Albania. Will Albania be ready when it comes to the economic reforms also? Do you see progress in that field? And I know it's your field of expertise.
Can I just say one thing regarding what Ms. Papadopoulou was saying as well? First time I went to Brussels for negotiations, for integration negotiations, I had the chance to also have dinner with some of the DG NEAR officials. And the one thing that they said was, it's extremely unfortunate that a lot of Ukrainians had to die for the perception on the Western Balkans to change. But it has happened now, and we all need to take advantage of it. I see it as a generational challenge. I was born in 1985. I am a child of the 90s, so essentially my entire life has been spent on this path of the hope of Albania joining the EU. And I'm one of the first, not the first people, but I'm one of those who completely realizes that if we do not complete this objective right now, I'm 40 years old now. If we do not do it now, it is very likely that it's not going to happen within my lifetime. So I completely agree that now that this chance is here, both sides need to take advantage of it. Regarding the economic development, Yes, I think that is one of the key areas where we have actually taken massive steps. Especially the post-COVID period has been quite beneficial for Albania's economic development. The country has shown significant resilience. I wasn't even sure we would be able to bounce back as quickly. Obviously, tourism has played an incredible part in all of this, bringing a lot of revenues even to far-flung areas and remote areas that hadn't seen a lot of development in the last 30 years. It has provided a lifeline for a lot of communities which had been to a certain extent even struggling in the post-communist period. But now we need to use the economic momentum that tourism has brought to develop new sectors. And this can be done in many ways. First of all, when people come and visit the country initially as tourists, they will also start to see business opportunities. They will start to see investment opportunities. And this is our hope. Well, our hope is that once they build these social links, eventually they will also translate to business links. We have, and we're working very hard to shift a lot of our services from services based mostly in the internal market to services based to the outside world. The digital revolution, which every country is trying to take benefits from, we're really. I think we have some very ambitious targets there because we already had a very strong service-based sector essentially for supplying the Italian markets. And a lot of these companies are now shifting to providing digital services globally. So we see a very dynamic sector there. But we also believe, and I'm a very strong believer in this, that the EU enlargement process is also going to play a very strong economic, have a strong economic impact. Because our Prime Minister, and I think Albania has been at the forefront of this, we really believe in regional integration. We really believe in this idea of the benefits from freer trade, removing trade barriers. We're a small country. So economies of scale are very important to the region. So we've really tried to remove trade barriers within the region, so the Western Balkan states, but I think now more and more also by integrating our systems even more with EU system, removing all the remaining trade barriers with the EU as we prepare ourselves to join the single market. That I think will have massive benefits for all of our industries and for all of our services and our businesses, which right now for a lot of reasons are restricted to supplying a very limited local internal market.
Thank you very much. Final question, Mr. State Secretary. I noticed also in your response, but I know also from following what's happening in Serbia, there is a bit of a disappointment in Belgrade for not opening the Cluster 3 negotiations, the negotiations in Cluster 3. Can you tell us a bit more about the readiness of Serbia in that department? There's several chapters there, negotiating chapters, but also why it's important for Serbia in the accession process to move forward in that direction?
Because you mentioned that it is the last question, I can't leave your beautiful country without saying that in Serbia we are very grateful to your country for your support on our EU path and also for your support on territorial integrity, sovereignty of Serbia and all vital interests of my country. What you mentioned about Cluster 3, it's not what we are saying, but actually the European Union institutions assess that we are technically prepared to open this cluster for 3 consecutive years already. And we are still not opening it because of the political conditioning. This is very important because it's related to the economic performance of Serbia and economic integration and harmonization of standards in Serbia with those of the EU. As I mentioned, we were the second fastest European economy last year, and it is predicted that this year we will again have around 4% economic growth, which means that Serbian economy is performing much better than most of European economies in terms of the economic growth. And we think that this is definitely important. We are also happy to see that other neighboring countries from the region, as Albania, for example, are growing also very fast. And while we are waiting for the EU to open new clusters and chapters. We look forward to work with our neighbors on economic cooperation and economic initiatives that are connecting us, such as Open Balkans Initiative, Berlin Process, and others, that can prepare us better for joining the EU once when time comes. So now, regarding Cluster 3, I think it's not on us anymore. You know, in technical terms, for political reasons, you can always invent some news, so I cannot predict when we will actually open this.
Thank you very much. I think it became clear both from the candidate countries, but also from the member states, that there is a willingness, desire, a strong impetus to continue the process. The enlargement is geopolitical with technical characteristics, as you said, but still it's a geopolitical imperative for Europe, and the opportunity should not be missed, right? Ms. Papadopoulou, thank you very much. Please join me to thank the audience, the speakers. Thank you very much.